All right, welcome back, everyone, to Birds of a Feather Talk Together. This is RJ, and I'm with John, Shannon, and Amanda, and we're really excited to have Ellen Weatherford joining us to talk Flamingos today. So welcome, Ellen. We're super excited to talk to you.
Hi, all. I'm so excited. Thanks for having me here.
So, Ellen, we're fans of Just the Zoo of Us, but for our listeners who have not heard and are not familiar with you, do you want to just give us a little background of who you are and also tell us a little bit about your wonderful podcast?
Yeah, of course. So like you mentioned, it's Just the Zoo of Us. It's a podcast where we rate and review animals. A lot of times we give them ratings out of 10 in different categories, which is kind of fun. But in more recent years, when we've had guests on, a lot of times we take more sort of zoomed out. Sometimes guests will do like a top 3. They'll do like their top 3 of like animals of a certain category, or, you know, their top 3 stories from their field or something like that. And it hasn't come out yet, but recently recorded with John and Shannon, and that's we had a really, really great conversation that's going to be coming out in, I think, December. So that was really fun. And yeah, we usually talk to, it's either me and my husband who co-hosts with me, and I do a bunch of notes, I do a lot of research, and then kind of like we do our ratings for animals, or we have experts on we have guests on who, you know, are zoologists or biologists or researchers, or sometimes they're musicians or artists or comedians or something like that, on to talk about their favorite animals. So it's really, really fun conversations. We learn a lot. I've learned a lot through the 6 years we've been doing the show, but I myself am kind of just a guy, just someone, I back 6 years ago now in 2019, my husband and I just wanted something to do together. Like, we wanted a fun hobby, and we listened to a lot of podcasts. We listened to a lot of like comedy podcasts and kind of edutainment podcasts. So we're like, it would be so fun if we tried it. If we just like, let's just get some microphones and we'll record it for fun, and it'll be a fun little bit. It'll be like a silly little thing we do, and we'll post it and our friends can listen to it. Maybe our family members, we think maybe 20 people maximum are going to hear this. Like 10 to 20 people maybe are going to be curious enough to hit play. And that's kind of what it was, until we just didn't stop and we just kept doing it. And then eventually people who weren't our immediate friends and family members started listening to it. And it kind of snowballed over the years. And then we joined the Maximum Fun Network. People who listen to a lot of podcasts might be familiar with some Maximum Fun shows. That was huge. And we've been really enjoying it for like 6 years. So I've had the chance to learn a lot through that process and talk to like really, really cool people I have frankly no business talking to at all. Like, I've had like really, really awesome like connections, and now I have like actual friends that I'm just like, wow, it kind of still is humbling to be like, I've got friends like that I like dreamed of being connected with, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
How did you find the Maximum Fun Network? How did that work for you?
So my husband Christian and I had been listening to a lot of Maximum Fun podcasts already. So at the point when we started recording, we had been listening to like The Adventure Zone and My Brother and Me and like Sawbones and stuff like that for like 3 or 4 years at that point. So we were already pretty familiar with their podcasts, and I actually like pitched to them cold, like out of nowhere. Didn't know anybody, was just sending in to like their like, you know, general pitch email address. And I ended up pitching like 3 times, because the first time was when we were itty bitty baby, only had like, you know, 15 episodes. And then like a year later, I sent another email again that was like, hey, we're still making this podcast. Like, it's still here, just letting you know. And then, you know, didn't hear anything back. And then another year after that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try one more time. Like, I'm going to just in case, it couldn't hurt, you know? So I sent one last email in, and I was like, if I don't hear back after this, I'm going to move on, and I'm going to, you know, not worry about it anymore. But then they did get back to me, and they were like, hey, let's talk. So I was just professionally annoying, which I think is one of my strengths.
That is a good attribute.
Yeah, it's good to be persistent.
It was persistence, and also just a little bit of shamelessness, right? Like a little bit of like, you know what? what could it hurt?
Yeah.
What you
Awesome.
said made me laugh because when we first started releasing these podcasts, when you would look at the map of where people downloaded, you could see exactly where we were from.
Yes. Yes.
You know what's funny?
And that's
that was
it.
how it started. That was how it started for us. But then, like now, even just like a year or two later, our hometown doesn't even place on the map. Like it's not even close. So like people think that like, you know, because we have listeners all over the world and stuff, that we must be like locally famous or like local stars. And no, there's like maybe 4 or 5 people in our hometown that have ever heard of us. So like now our little hometown is just like, it doesn't even place on our map.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, Ellen, I wanted to ask, so we first kind of got turned on to you from our mutual friends Tommy and Billy from the Extremely Accurate Bird Songs podcast, and you were so great on their episode, and so we went back and started listening to you after hearing it on there. But I understand when you talked to John and Shannon on your podcast that you kind of went back a ways with Tommy as far as his music. I just wanted to ask about that.
This is brutally embarrassing. I'm sorry. But it's a good story. It's just an embarrassing one on my part, I guess. Was a huge, I say was, like I'm not anymore, I still am, but I was a huge Jukebox the Ghost fan from when I was like, I think I started listening to them when I was like 15 years old. So I was like a teen. They were my favorite band in high school. Everyone who knew me in high school knew they were my favorite band because I wore their t-shirts all the time. I was just really into this band. They were my first concert that I ever went to. I drove 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
And they were even opening for another band. Like they were the opener. We drove 3 hours to see them. After they were done, we left because we just wanted to see them. So I took pictures with them because they were like still at the point where they were like meeting with fans at their merch booth after their set. So I got to like take pictures. So I have a picture of me and Tommy when I was like probably 15 years old. So I was just a huge fan, huge Jukebox the Ghost fan. So after, years and years of going to all their shows, listening to all their music, like literally like every time an album dropped, day one, I'm listening to it. Huge fan. And then a few years ago, they had one of their new albums coming out and they like posted on Twitter and were like, hey, we have a new album coming out. If anyone has like a podcast, we would love to come talk about the new album on your podcast. Now, I know logically that they mean music podcasts. They mean podcasts about music. Like that's what they're looking for. But I also happen to know that Tommy's really into birds. Like I happen to know that from following his like, cartoons and his illustrations and stuff. So I know he's into birds. So I send them a message. I'm like, I know this is not at all what you were asking about, but hear me out. Does Tommy want to come talk about birds with me? And Tommy was like, yeah, that sounds awesome.
I was going to say, you didn't have to write 3 times on that one.
No, that was like an immediate response. He was like, yes. So he came and talked to birds, and I was so nervous. I was like pacing the floor. Like I had some pretty, well-known, high-profile guests by that point, but this felt a lot more personal. Yeah. Like this felt a lot more like I was more like wound up and like nervous about it than like anything else at that point. So I was like pacing the floors. I was so nervous. But then of course, Tommy, you guys have all met him. He's a doll and it was just like the sweetest and most fun to talk to. It was really, really great. And the conversation went awesome. And we just kind of like kept in touch after that. I would like send him, because we talked about sandhill cranes and I lived in Florida. So you see sandhill cranes. So I would like take a picture of them when I saw them. I'd send them to him. And so we would like swap bird pictures sometimes like that. And he was just so nice. And then when he was starting his own podcast, they reached out to me and had me to join them for that. And that was really, really fun. And then right after we recorded that, he was in Seattle for a show. And I was like, I know some bird watching spots. Are you interested? And he's like, yeah. So we ended up getting to like go bird watching and hiking and stuff. I took a picture. It was like me and Christian and Tommy. And I sent it to my family group chat. And my grandmother, who of course lived with me when I was a teenager, was like, that's not, is he a Jukebox the Ghost?
Oh my gosh. Way to go, Grandma. That's awesome.
I was like, yeah.
That is awesome.
So that's what I mean by like, I feel like now I've like made friendships and connections with like people that I really had no business ever speaking to. But like it has really, really been, it's such a cool way that not just birds, but like animals in general, and like the passion for like nature and wildlife has like really helped me make a lot of really cool connections with like-minded people.
Cool.
That's awesome. I love
Yeah,
that.
Me too.
I'll
Did
see
you
if I
see?
can send you the picture of me and Tommy from like
Yes.
literally it
Oh,
must have been 15 years ago.
we'd love to see that.
It's a little
Yeah.
baby picture. It's so my hair, you can tell I just had a really botched bleach job because my hair looks just atrocious. It's like the worst my hair's ever
Oh my
looked.
gosh.
So that's going to be really, really great. to
That's
see.
all of us in high school. I get it. Yes.
No cell phone
Cool.
cameras, though, for me and John. So we're protected
Oh,
from
lucky.
Yeah.
John's protected from some of the dodgy things that he did. I, of course, never did anything dodgy, so there would be no images of me like that because I was so straight. So-
John, did you
Shannon's
have
like,
bleach
I've
blonde
actually
hair?
never done anything wrong, and you can't prove
had
otherwise.
I had hair that wouldn't have fit in one of these windows on.
Can you with your hands? Can you show me how
Yeah,
far
show
out?
us with your hands.
Yeah, I was when I get it cut, I call it getting the hedge clipped.
Are we talking Bob Ross? Are we going full
Are
like?
we, yeah, right
Yeah.
outside of Bob
I never
Ross?
went that bad.
You
no,
did
no.
you did in COVID because he didn't get his hair cut for a whole
Oh, that's
year.
true. I
And, you
forgot
know,
about that.
Most people's hair falls down eventually.
Yeah,
But no,
with
his
curly
not.
hair, you
His-
got to power through that like phase, but yours just keeps going.
It just, like a big halo of gray hair at this point around his head.
People pay a lot of money for curls like that, though.
That's right.
so-
Yeah, my
That's
hair
right.
won't
You're
curl,
lucky.
so it's not even possible for me.
Oh my gosh. Too funny.
Well, Ellen, so we're going to talk flamingos today, and we're super excited to talk flamingos. We actually prepped a while ago for a flamingo episode, and for some reason it got lost. We didn't end up recording it. I think we talked a little bit about crop milk, I think, John, on
Mhm.
one of our episodes, which maybe we can talk about today. But I was just curious, Ellen, you picked flamingos, so we're curious to hear, what is it about flamingos that made you want to talk more about them? What's your experience with flamingos?
I have some experience with flamingos. As I mentioned earlier, I am from Florida. I am from North Florida, a stone's throw from the border with Georgia. So not fully like what people associate with flamingo territory. Really, none of Florida is really flamingo territory anymore. Although I heard they're starting to come back a little bit. I heard
They
they're
are,
starting to make their way
yeah.
back up. But they were, they did live in Florida, but even when they did live in Florida more commonly, it was way down in the southern, in the swamps and the Everglades and stuff. So they never really made it as far north as me, but flamingos are just really heavily associated with Florida, and you think of lawn flamingos and beach, tropical, summer. So I picked a great, really timely time of year to talk about flamingos, the dead of November, which is when everyone's got tropical beaches on their mind.
Yes.
I do. I have
Yes.
tropical beaches on my mind. The
For
snow.
sure.
put
Maybe it's a
me-
living vicariously thing.
I no.
Yes.
I call it I live in a delusion. That's
Listen, you call it delusion, I call it fantasy.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I like
Well, you're nicer
fantasy
to
too.
yourself than I am.
So the flamingos, I think, are usually associated with that sort of tropical, beachy sort of vibe. You'll see them on a lot of decorations. And my husband and I always thought it was funny how flamingos were used as they were considered an icon of Florida. They're so heavily associated with Florida. So much Florida things have flamingos as their icons or logo. I want to say the lottery uses a
Oh,
flamingo.
wow.
The Florida lottery,
That's
I think, uses a
hilarious.
flamingo. But you see flamingos everywhere in Florida stuff, and people associate flamingos with being from Florida, and we're we have never seen them. Literally never seen them in the wild in Florida. So we just thought it was funny how people always associated them with Florida, but they really don't live there anymore. Other than you get these little migratory, some of them from the Caribbean will come up into there for a little bit and then they go home. So we thought that was kind of funny. But also, I just think they're fascinating birds because of how bizarre they are. Like, everything about them seems like you took some normal thing birds do and you did it kind of weird. Like, everything about, like, you will never mistake a flamingo for anything else. Like, you know one when you see it. They're so, and like, you know how the idea of like a style icon or a fashion icon being like identifiable by the silhouette? Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing that has a flamingo silhouette. Like, you're going to know one when you see it, you know? Like, I feel like they have such a strong branding. Strong
Yes,
branding for
I
the
love
flamingo.
that.
They definitely do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually think the ones for a long time when I was a kid, they used to talk about Hialeah Racetrack as having a captive flock, and whenever flamingo would show up someplace else, the question was whether or not it was an escapee. And so I think there are, I think the population is, I think there have been more records in southern Florida in the last 5 to 10 years than there have been over the previous 30, 40 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had heard that they were like starting to like make their way back up there. But if you look back, I think it was prior to like even just 1900, they used to have big flocks that would like come up to the Everglades in South Florida, at least just during, I guess it would probably be the winter that they would come up. But they would migrate into the area, but then over time they just stopped going. Obviously, my first thought of that would be the feathers. Like maybe they're being hunted for feathers because we saw that with things like spoonbills and like other birds with like these brightly colored feathers. But then I was thinking like because of how the feathers are colored by like metabolic processes in the bird, I don't know if the feathers keep their color when you take them off the bird.
Good question.
I don't actually know
Oh yeah,
that.
no, they
do.
they definitely
They do.
Okay.
They do.
When you come to
we can vouch for
Chicago,
that.
when you come to Chicago, we'll show them to you.
Cool.
Now, would they get? Because what I'm wondering is because like I know with like spoonbills and stuff, I know people would use the pink feathers for like hats and stuff like that. But then I feel like you get sun bleaching problems from them, in that like they're not going to stay pink forever if you're like keeping them out in the sun. I mean, you guys wouldn't be keeping yours out in the sun. You're taking good care of yours.
Right.
No, but they do fade in exhibitions, and that's one of the reasons why we have special glass in our exhibitions to filter out the light waves that fade specimens, because it doesn't take very long for them to fade. So you can always tell a specimen that's been out from under the right kind of glass for a long period of time, because they basically just get bleached to, some kind of version of gray or brown.
But I love what you were saying about the iconic image, because I do think it's actually one of the more recognizable silhouettes you could possibly come up with in the bird world. And a lot of that's based on the fact that they're such specialized feeders. So I think one of the reasons why they may not be very common in Florida is there may not be that much good habitat available for them to actually do the things they do, which is essentially filter feed in very shallow water with that bill literally tipped upside down. I mean, they forage with their head going down into the water, and their bill is designed to filter for microorganisms and in salty water and filter them out. And so it's, they're a really bizarre group of birds. One other thing I was going to point out is that while we think of them as tropical, there are actually species on these shallow lakes high up in the Andes too. So when you go to the zoo, you often see American flamingos or greater flamingos, which are from Africa, that are lowland, but there are also Chilean flamingos, which are breeding up in the high elevations of the Andes. So they're surprisingly adaptable, as specialized as they are, just because they find these lakes that have macroinvertebrates and things in the shallow waters that they specialize on.
Yeah, I found this paper actually because I had heard about this paper when it came out in May of this year. So like fresh, hot off the presses, basically. I had heard about this paper when it came out because it was wild, but this was after we had done our flamingo episode, so I didn't really have like an outlet for it at the time. But I went back and looked at it and read it because I wanted to talk about it with you guys. This is a paper that came out in May. I don't know if you guys saw it, about the ways that flamingos use like kind of their whole suite of like traits and behaviors to make to like basically water bend. They're like water bending. They're like manipulating the flow of the water and making like vortices and currents and stuff. Did you guys see this paper?
No, but there's incredible videos of particularly the high elevation ones, foraging together in these big groups,
Ooh.
and they'll do this in the when you go to the zoo. Sometimes you can see that sort of happening. Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about that from a scientific perspective, but there's definitely video of them essentially working together, just like white pelicans would, in terms of moving the water around to get the things that they want to eat.
So they
Can I
basically
drop a link? Can I
Yeah,
drop
for
a link
sure.
to you guys?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
So
not
that you
sure
can
if
look
I
at the paper that
I
I'm
don't
looking
think I
at?
saw that one. I mean, they basically filter feed like a baleen whale. So they
Yeah.
they open their mouths, they get the water inside, and then they squish it out. All the water leaves, and they're left with whatever invertebrates they sucked up in the water. So
And
it's
I
it's like a strainer. Their beak is like a strainer.
Yeah. And I was thinking as I was like reading this paper and thinking about it. Okay, so you know how like the flamingo has this sort of like the beak is almost like boomerang shaped. There's like an angle to it and it's like flat on the top. I was looking at this and I was thinking that looks a lot like a whale's mouth to me.
Yep,
Like certain types of
that's right.
whales, like humpback whales and right whales have that like angle. It like there's a bend and a flat part on top, but it's like the other way around. They're like the same thing but like flipped around. And I was thinking, I was like, that is really like an interesting, like for being such a weird shape. It's weird that it happened twice and like so far apart in the like animal tree. And then I was reading this paper and they said the same thing. They said interestingly, right whales have similarly shaped filter feeding apparatuses. It says recent evidence suggests that southern right whales prey on small planktonic organisms at the seafloor, raising questions about whether these whales also induce vortices to trap and upwell prey through the interaction of their arched jaws with the seafloor. So isn't that weird?
That's so cool.
Yeah. I mean,
It's so cool.
flamingos
That's
don't
really
have a
weird.
straw, right? So they're not sucking things through a big straw. They have to actually get enough of the water into their mouth. Otherwise, they're going to have to work a lot. If they're just going
it seems like
around
they
without
do.
creating waves inside, they're going to have to walk around with their mouth open a lot.
Oh, can you imagine having to like to get all the water in there? Like, I feel like they
No.
wouldn't even have like the
Gross.
airflow to do it.
Yeah, it's gross to
Gross.
think about.
So in this like study, they talked about how the sort of big things they were doing to like manipulate the flow of the water was like, first of all, which I think people knew already, was like stomping their feet, right? Like the whole like pattering their feet on the ground to like stir up the sediment and kick up critters out of the sand. But they also talked about how there's another thing flamingos will do, which is like quickly retract their head up. So like zoop their head up like towards the surface of the water from the bottom. And they talked about how doing that because of that flat side, that like flat part of the beak that can rest on the sand, flat, not like curved, so it would be like awkward. They can rest it flat on the bottom and then quickly pull it up, and that creates an upward current, which makes like it gets little invertebrates trapped in the current going up. So they're like pulling, not just like kicking sediment up, but actually creating a current that's forcing everything up. And then the chattering of the beak, like the sort of like sort of thing that they do, is creating these like swirls that make the water flow towards their mouth. So
cool.
like little critters, so like little invertebrates like shrimp and stuff that otherwise would be really fast and could like swim away. They're like, oh no, a flamingo's coming, they can swim away. They get caught in this like swirling like whirlpool, and then the current pulls them straight up into the flamingo's mouth.
It's amazing.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
Have you read a book called The Flamingo Smile? Have you heard of that?
Ooh,
It's by
no.
Stephen Jay Gould. And it was, I did not grow up in a scientific way. And when I first went to graduate school, I'd never even really read a scientific paper before I went to graduate school. But one of the first things I saw, it was on John O'Neill's shelf. And I used to, who was a really important ornithologist in neotropical ornithology who was at LSU when I first got there. And he had a book called The Flamingo Smile on his shelf. And it's by a famous evolutionary biologist at the American Museum of Natural History, Stephen Jay Gould. Harvard. Oh,
Harvard.
it's right. His one of his collaborators was at the AMNH. But yeah, so that's one of the first books I read in graduate school. And it was all about what you're talking about. why do flamingos look like they're smiling, for example?
Mm.
And
I saw this
all
post
of his
on the
writing is really accessible to the general audience, and I think it's really stood at the test of time. Some of the things that he's written. So yeah, it sounds like you would really, really like it because it's a natural history kind of tale about flamingos, why they look the way they do. Um, and I'd be curious. I didn't
Did,
have enough time to read it now. Now that you said what you said, I wonder
Yeah.
how I would read that. Because to me, it just blew my
yeah.
mind. I mean, I never really thought about looking at the world that way. And all of a
Mm.
sudden, I was looking at the world completely differently after reading that book.
Yeah. I saw a post recently on like Instagram or something about how like no Disney animator has ever seen a flamingo open its mouth
Wow.
because in like
Oh,
cartoons and stuff they always kind of do it. They give them almost like a toucan beak
Oh.
because I think they think like, oh, tropical bird, they got a big beak, it probably looks kind of like this. And they end up just kind of making them like generically beak shaped. And I was thinking about it and I was like, I feel like if animators and cartoon designers and stuff like accurately represented the flamingo's beak, it would be very off-putting, I think. I don't think it would translate well into a cartoon.
you don't think they'd be standing on one leg in everybody's yard in Florida if they were portrayed
Yeah.
accurately?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, because like the beak is like everything is just like upside down about
Right.
it, like because of how they have to flip their head upside down. And like I was reading about all the ways that their beak is so weird and how it's even in like the way that the beak attaches to the head, where like in most birds the top part is the part that's fixed onto the head and the lower part moves around, except for parrots. I think parrots can move the top part too because they're like special and they have to use their beaks like in a bunch of different ways. But like for flamingos, the bottom part is kind of bolted on and the bottom part is fixed, but the top part hinges. And I was just thinking about, I was like, I know to like us and maybe people who haven't like looked a ton into like how evolution like changes anatomy, that seems like not a big deal. It seems like, okay, the hinge is just in a different place.
Right.
But like that's a huge change to make. Like to change the way that like a structure connects to the skull like that is an enormous change. And like it is really, really mind-blowing to me that they're able to like basically restructure the entire like
Yeah.
this entire main feeding structure of their face to make it make sense upside down.
I mean, I go back to the first time that it happened. Like, what happened there? Why on earth did
Like,
the
what could that gradient have
ancestor
looked like?
of? I don't know because it's really stupid. I always talk about things that are just stupid to start with, right? Like I study kingfishers, and diving into the water was just flat out stupid. But thinking that you should feed by tipping your head upside down in the water, like why?
Just do it different. Just do
Well,
it different.
and
And how?
and there's
Why
nothing
didn't they drown?
there's nothing else that does it. Shannon, you
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit about what they're related to?
So if you look in most field guides, you'll see loons by grebes as water birds, usually right at the beginning of your field guide. But it turns out that when you actually do a character-based analyses, especially of DNA, that flamingos are the most closely related to grebes, not to loons. So flamingos
Which
are
is-
related to something that looks zero like them, behaves zero like them. So all of that morphological specialization evolved after grebes and flamingos split from each other, which
Wow.
is just, to me, it's just mind-boggling
Yeah,
to
Yeah.
think
you
about
go from
that.
a short-legged diving bird that's, I mean, at least they're both in the water, I guess, but not really, and yet, with flamingos you got these long-legged filter feeders, and then they're completely different from grebes, and it's a lot of evolutionary time. I mean, it's not like they're it's probably 20 million years ago that they split.
Yeah.
That's like nothing. That's like no time.
Wow.
Well,
That's
you
like
should
20
see,
minutes.
well, almost the entire diversification of birds happened within a shorter period of time than that after the dinosaurs went extinct. And the Earth got destroyed by outside forces. So birds can and did evolve quickly. But that to me is just it's a mind-boggling thing. And if you read The Flamingo Smile, you'll get a lot of insight into at least how Stephen Jay Gould thought about that, which is really interesting. It's an easy read too, and it's really a fun read.
I feel like Gould is funny. Gould is really funny, like a lot, because I read one of his papers recently it was like on kiwi evolution, and I feel like he's funny. He's got a little sass to him. He's got a little attitude.
Sweet.
You can hear some attitude in there.
That's awesome.
Well, if historically you look back at what science was like when he was talking about the things he was talking about, it was you had to be bold to say the things he was saying.
There was a lot of personal beef too. I feel like there was a lot of like, actually,
yeah, that's fair. I think that's fair.
Awesome.
The thing that you said about the flamingos being like related to grebes more so than anything else was especially shocking growing up in Florida and seeing and often confusing flamingos with spoonbills because the roseate spoonbill does live in Florida. You will find them in Florida, and when they fly over, which in North Florida was uncommon, but it happened. And you'd see this group of medium-ish, like medium-large pink birds. If they fly over fast, everyone thinks they're flamingos. So everyone's going to say a bunch of flamingos just flew over us because pink birds flew over. You could usually just figure out from context clues they were probably spoonbills, because especially if they were flying north in like northern Florida, you're like, why would flamingos be going up there? But we one time, so lucky. Our house had a retention pond in the backyard, and a roseate spoonbill was in our backyard.
Awesome.
Was in our pond in our backyard. It was the only time I saw one that landed in our entire county. And it was in our backyard. Literally, I was on my couch in my living room looking at a spoonbill like in our yard. And it was just one, and he looked kind of young because he was still really fluffy. But gosh, I took 400,000 pictures because I was so excited. I had my big girl camera with me too, so I got some really good pictures. But it was just gorgeous bird. But we did see, I feel like spoonbills so strongly resemble flamingos. They're pink. They're like the wading birds. They even do the sort of beak chittering thing that reminds you a lot of flamingos in some way. They're not doing the same flipping upside down and water bending that the flamingos are doing, but like you can see a lot of similarities. And it would be really simple if those were their cousins, right? You would make the logical guess of like, they look like them, they kind of act like them, they should be cousins. And they're like, not even close.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Nope.
So Amanda and RJ, have you guys seen flamingos?
No, I have not. At least I don't think so. And I think I'm guilty of what Ellen was talking about because I growing up, I would go down to Florida. I would go down to Sanibel Island and go to Ding Darling Wildlife Refuge down there. And I like from when I was a baby, basically. And I remember like being, 5 years old and thinking I saw flamingos, and then being like 10 years old and seeing so many roseate spoonbills and being like, man, not as many flamingos as there used to be.
Yeah.
And it makes me think that there were probably never any flamingos. And in my head, I was telling myself, oh, wow, there's all these pink birds that I'm seeing and I'm in Florida. They must be flamingos. So
Totally.
I don't think I've honestly actually ever seen them. So no. Amanda, have you?
I haven't either. I was going to say, I wanted to comment on what Ellen was saying about the flamingo brand, or how they have such a strong brand with their silhouette in our neighborhood. So we live in an apartment, but it's in a residential neighborhood with lots of single family homes, and there's a couple houses that do flamingos in the yard. And one of the cutest things we've seen is there's like a house that does there's two houses that do like seasonal flamingos. So at the 4th of July, they have a red, white, and blue flamingo. And then we just saw, this is new this year, we saw just down the street from us, there was a house that had a black flamingo with bloody fangs for Halloween.
Ooh, that's cool. And I feel like very representative of, actual flamingo because of the milk, the crop milk that's like bright red, right? And then and it comes out of the mouth.
Sweet. I love that.
I do feel like that's like all it's missing is the little fangs, and there you go. You've got like a very strong vampire imagery because I've seen like there's like a really, really famous, I guess, or at least popular and widely shared picture of like two flamingos feeding a baby flamingo,
Right.
but one of the adult flamingos has its beak on the other adult flamingo's head, and the crop milk is kind of coming out of its mouth onto the head of the other adult flamingo, which is bright red.
Oh, wow.
And it looks like the adult flamingo is like lobotomizing the lower flamingo. Like if you look up like flamingo red milk or something like that, you'll see the picture immediately. It looks horrifying when you first see it because it looks like the flamingo is like brutalizing this other one, and then it's just they're just feeding a baby. It's all it's okay.
Awesome.
So I wanted to see what people said about that. And so there's this hilarious Reddit thread. It says, no, one flamingo is not bludgeoning the head of another.
That's what it looks like. I'm looking at it right now. It looks so scary.
While feeding an offspring. And the Reddit thread is absolutely hilarious with people saying, well, you just burst my bubble. And, because
the crop milk thing is
funny.
Another like thing that blows my mind about them because maybe you guys talked about this when you talked about crop milk before, but like the fact that crop milk is like only produced by like what is it, like 3 different types of birds, and they're like not related to each other. So I'm like, what was the process here? Like how did that happen? Was it like a trait that all the other birds lost except for these for some reason, or was it something that like they all well, I guess the flamingos one is pretty different from like the pigeons one, right? Like I think the flamingos one is more like a digestive process, and like I think in the pigeons it's something else, but like I wonder if it was something that like those birds all decided they needed and had to develop, or like originally they all had it and then they just all lost it except for these. But like that seems so weird to me.
No,
So
I
I'm
think they
gonna-
gained it independently.
Yeah, that's what I would guess too.
And the
And one thing I was
flamingo.
gonna
Sorry, John.
Oh, I was just going to say real quickly that in a sense, you are what you eat. And so the color of the crop milk is, again, the result of getting all these carotenoids from eating crustacean-like, small crustaceans. And when we were talking about it earlier, roseate spoonbill has this pinkish color, again, because they're filter feeding crustaceans too. There's one other bird I can think of like that, which is scarlet ibis. And so, it's interesting that in Florida, you'd have white ibis, for instance, which don't have pinkish color, to my knowledge. Maybe they get it from time to time. But down in northern South America, along the coast, there's a bright red ibis called scarlet ibis that definitely is foraging in similar areas to spoonbills and flamingos in order to get the carotenoids that it puts into its plumage.
I was just doing a Google search because I do feel like white ibises in Florida turned pink. I feel like I saw some pink ibises.
It wouldn't surprise me.
I think they did, but it was not like you would see like mostly white ones, and I think maybe like a couple of them might be kind of pinkish. But also they could have gotten into something else. I don't know. They could have like rolled around in some hair dye or something like that. But I do feel like some of them turned pink. But I just, as you can imagine, a Google search for pink white ibis, Google's getting a little confused.
How many
I don't know
stuffed
what you
animals?
want.
How many stuffed animals are you seeing?
A lot of Etsy listings. Yeah, Google's having a hard time figuring out what I want, but I do feel like they turned pink. But definitely not.
Yeah.
Not
Right?
that like salmon color that you see in like the flamingos and spoonbills. Those are more of a treat.
So-
and also the ibises would like swarm people's yards. Like
Right.
you would
Yeah,
get
they're
like
they're
40
like
to 50 of
dogs,
them.
Oh,
like little
wow.
packs of. Yeah, they're strange. They've really adapted to humans.
They love
There's
it.
lots of
They love
different-
humans.
There's a lot of different ways that pigments go inside of feathers, and the amount of what you eat, like these shrimp, make you pinker, and that's the case in flamingos and in roseate spoonbills. But in other birds, it doesn't change the shade of the red or the pink. It just gets deposited that way, no matter what you eat. So you really can, and often things in zoos can either gain a lot of color or lose a lot of color because of what they're being fed. So they do put the pink in their feathers in a similar kind of way, directly from the diet. But that's really different from how a rosy finch might, or cardinals, other birds that do have carotenoid pigments, but deposit them really differently. So yeah, you can really pink up your flamingos if you feed them pinked up diets.
I mean, in the zoos, they actually have to watch the diet with
They
respect
do.
to getting them carotenoids, or they'll basically be white.
White,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
And nobody wants to come to the zoo for that.
Exactly. I've always thought that's
boring.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Off-brand.
Yeah,
What do you mean
off-brand.
That's off. That's off image. We can't be doing that.
That doesn't look anything like the one in my neighbor's yard.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I think that like lawn ornament flamingos get exponentially funnier the farther from the equator they are. If you have a lawn flamingo in like Alaska, that's hilarious. I love. If you have a lawn flamingo in Florida, you're like, okay, yeah.
I think if you have a lawn flamingo outside of Florida, that's odd. I think that the oddity is fairly restricted to Florida in that
We
sense.
have. Amanda and I have a lawn flamingo that we put at our campsite when we go
Yes.
camping,
It's
just
part
so
of
we
our
know which
camp
spot is
gear.
ours.
Yes.
That's
So funny.
smart.
It sits in our basement, but when we go to those
Yes.
big campsites where there's like 100 campsites and you're driving trying to find your spot,
Yes.
we have this pink flamingo that we put in.
Yeah,
right
I'm
by-
so proud
so
of
we
it.
always know how to get back to it. We're like, oh, there's our spot.
Yes.
See,
You know what that would be
you're
great
gonna
for?
you're gonna start something here, and you won't be able to use it anymore.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
sure, yeah, you gotta
Gave
go
away
for
the
that.
secret.
Everyone's gonna do it.
I
You know what
don't
this would
think
be
that's
great
a
for?
trend catching on, RJ. I think you guys are safe.
Maybe
Travel.
not. Maybe not.
Gonna go hiking with my flamingo so I can mark my trail.
You know how at festivals and like big like concerts and stuff, people will have banners so that their
Yes.
friends can find them again in the crowd.
Yes.
Yeah.
So people will have like memes printed out on giant cutouts or something. You'll have like someone's face
Yes.
blown up to like 5 feet tall, and they'll like have a cutout. Lawn flamingo.
Well, hell
Oh,
yeah.
there we
carry
go.
it. And that's your like festival. Like,
Yes.
here I am. Come
Yes.
find me. You'll look for the lawn flamingo.
I love
Bet
that.
you no one else is going to have one.
Exactly. I love that.
Yeah.
I bet you
Especially
no one
if,
else
like,
is
you-
going to have one too.
Give them little like sunglasses and stuff.
Yeah,
like
give 'em some
decorate it,
personality.
personalize it.
Yes. I love that.
There's no way you
The-
won't find that on Etsy. You will find all kinds of interesting things like that on Etsy.
I had on the topic of flamingos and zoos, because that's obviously like they didn't live in the wild, so that's where I saw them. And like every zoo in Florida has flamingos. Like it's just perfect for flamingos. So they're like, yeah, we're gonna have them. And actually, the Jacksonville Zoo had 2 different types of flamingos. They had Caribbean flamingos, and then they had, was it Chilean
It
flamingos?
was probably
maybe?
the Chileans. A lot
I
of
think it
the
was
zoos
yeah.
have
I think it was
which are
Chilean flamingos.
smaller.
Yeah, but like they had like a much more scarlet color, I feel like,
Oh,
than
cool.
the other ones. But they had them like in different areas too. Oh, you know what? The other flamingos were in the Africa exhibit, so maybe they were the greater flamingos. That must have been what they were. But so you had 2 different flamingo exhibits, but not at the Jacksonville Zoo, but at Busch Gardens in
Oh,
Tampa.
yeah.
Which if anyone's ever been to Busch Gardens in Tampa, is also, it's like theme park and zoo. So they have like a big zoo, like safari area in the middle, and like zoo exhibits all around. And then also like roller coasters and stuff. And when I was a little kid, I have a very traumatic memory of being at Busch Gardens with my dad and his girlfriend at the time, who the Busch Gardens did this thing, and I don't know if it was for like just for little kids or what, but for whatever reason, they let us little kids like into an area where they had a flock of flamingos, and you could like I think, you know what? I was
What?
doing like a summer camp thing. So maybe it was like part of like the summer camp where they let you
Okay.
behind the scenes and do stuff. So for whatever reason, me and a bunch of other little kids were like in a like a pen, like an enclosed area with flamingos. And I know I was a little kid because in my memory, the flamingo was taller than me.
Oh my
Like these things were
gosh.
huge. They were like
Yeah.
towering over us. And because we were little kids, the thing I remember the most about it, first of all, was that the flamingos would come up and like preen our hair. Like that was, I think, like why they let us in there, because the flamingos really enjoyed, like, they would do that beak chittering thing, but like through our hair. So they were like preening our hair.
And they knew they
Wow.
weren't going to drop crop milk on your head?
Yeah. Like that, like the maternal instinct kicks in and they're like, oh, it's a baby. Here you go.
Here you go, baby.
So they would preen our hair, which was delightful. This part, I'm having the time of my life. This is like my Disney princess moment. I'm like, the flamingos have accepted me. I'm like part of the flock. I'm one of their own.
Snow
They
White,
love
yes,
me.
Yes.
This is great. I'm having a fantastic time. And then I don't remember what triggered this, but at one point, one of the flamingos started walking towards me particularly menacingly. And I was like a very sort of like on edge, anxious, nervous kid. And I decided to kind of like flinch. And I don't know why, but this flamingo starts like fully charging me, like running at me.
Oh, no.
And so I get freaked out and I run away and the flamingo starts running faster.
Oh, no.
So I'm getting fully chased by this flamingo and I start like screaming and crying and the flamingo is like sort of starting to get its wings out. It's getting a little agitated. So I freak out, run back to the gate. They let me out and I go back to my dad. The flamingos did not escape. But like I was like inconsolable and my dad for like 20 years after that would constantly bring it up. He'd be like, you remember that time you got like fully bum rushed by a flamingo? Like
That is crazy. Oh my
wild.
Jeez Louise.
Seems like a
Obviously,
liability
there was nothing
issue.
the flamingo could have done. Like, there was nothing it could have done to hurt me.
Right.
Like, I was never in any actual danger, but I was a child, and this is like a large, kind of unfamiliar animal running at me. So I was like, I'm in mortal danger.
Terrifying. Seriously.
So they're really neat in terms. I wonder whether it was. I mean, so in the nesting, so they're always together. They're in these big groups in the wild, and they tend to nest by building up mud in shallow saltwater areas. And so I assume they do that largely to avoid predation in these colonies. And then the mud mound is basically to avoid the water changes and actually getting the eggs flooded out. But I wonder if they'll defend the areas right around the nests and maybe.
Yeah, I wonder if it was a defensive thing.
Yeah,
If I was like
yeah.
getting a little too close to a spot this flamingo had arbitrarily decided was its spot.
Oh. I like to think
I don't know, but that flamingo did not care for my presence.
Yeah. Maybe he like or maybe she was like, that's my baby. Let me hold you, baby.
Oh man, if it had started like producing crop milk, then there's like a flamingo running at me with what appears to be blood, like just like drooling blood. That would I would have been damaged for
Yes,
life.
you'd be like in an institution still.
I'd like still be in therapy about it.
I'm guessing at that point you never buy a lawn flamingo.
Exactly.
Flamingos are done
Yeah,
for me.
yeah.
They're ruined.
I know.
No, your
I'm impressed.
your dad's going to sue the zoo. That's a nutsy liability issue. I cannot believe they would never do that now. That seems crazy.
I know. That was the good old
It
days.
does seem like something I don't think they did. I've never heard of anyone else doing that. Like I've never heard of anyone else saying
You
they
were
had
the
that
last
experience
one.
there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if yeah, maybe that was it. That was they were like,
Yeah.
we can't do this anymore.
Good for you. I'm glad you're here talking about flamingos. You've overcome that.
Yeah, I've healed my relationship with flamingos. Yeah, we're okay.
But
Well, you
John,
know what?
the ones in there's a isolated population that is actually genomically isolated too in the Galapagos of what are
Wow.
resident flamingos, and they don't build mud nests. They build their nests just on top of rocks. So
Love that.
So
Deal with what you got.
So yeah. Well, it's interesting to think about the distribution of flamingos. So we've talked about these ones in Florida. Now you're pointing out they're in the Galapagos. They're in Africa too. We've talked about greater. There's also lesser flamingo, and they're a lot of these habitats that they live in can be ephemeral in the sense that they like shallow mud flats that have water on them, and depending on what's going on, those can disappear in drier conditions, and so
yeah,
they're clearly capable of getting up and going long distances when they need to, and
The
that's how
the
you get out to the Galapagos if you're a
I was about to say,
flamingo.
like, that's what, like 600 miles off the coast with like nothing in between.
Wow.
That is incredible to me
Yeah.
that they would have gone that way at all, not knowing that there's anything out there, right?
Yeah.
They're like, it's just the expanse of the ocean. Let's just fly
Yeah.
I mean,
for
they are
600 miles and see
routinely
if we find
flying.
anything.
They're
Yeah.
routinely flying hundreds of kilometers a day to find food. And that, I think, is one of the reasons why they were extirpated basically from Florida, is that man-made developments along the coast reduced the number of places. They need pretty specific salinity conditions and pristine, whatever that means, but where there are enough of these invertebrates to make it worthwhile going. So I think when humans started messing up the coast in Florida, there just wasn't. It just became too hard to find food, and you had to travel too far. So the populations just probably got smaller and smaller and smaller. And now it seems to me the places that you see them now are not necessarily historically where they would have been thought to be. So they can be in these man-made areas that have some salinity if they're protected from other kinds of human activities, I suppose. So there's
and also that's where the crustaceans will be. So as if the food is there, they can survive. My guess is the other aspect about colonization like that is that imagining what happened to colonize the Galapagos, it was probably a group of birds of which a lot probably perished, and then at least one male and one female got out there in order to start the populations.
They have extremely low genetic diversity, which is an indication of just that the founding population was made up of small numbers of individuals. And I don't know, I would be, the paper I looked on their genomics didn't talk about this, but I wonder if when they flock and fly in these small flocks, I wonder if the individuals are related to each other or if it's just a random mix of whatever's around. So I don't know if there's familial relationships in these flocks, which would further reduce, because of inbreeding possibility, the genomic diversity in any establishing population like that. We think about this a lot because one of our students works on parrots, and the things that people have done to parrots are crazy. People are crazy.
But you're not going to have, a pair of flamingo. Well, maybe that's not true, but on your own in captivity. But although I guess some people probably do. I was actually thinking that with respect to those, so a lot of what we know about flamingos is actually from zoos, because it's really actually hard to get out and study flamingos in a lot of the places they occur in the wild, because they're just not that accessible, even though they're in open areas. But if they're out in the middle of a giant salt lake, they're not readily reachable in order to study. And so they're relatively speaking somewhat understudied for a bird that is really noticeable like that.
Did you guys see it was one of those Our Planet, Blue Planet, it wasn't Blue Planet, I think maybe one of the Our Planet series, the bit they had on the baby flamingos in the salt flat?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
It's the most awful, gut-wrenching, horrific thing I've ever watched.
Oh, no.
Where it gets,
And I
where
was
it
like,
gets salt
it is-
stuck to its feet and it
Oh
can't shake
my
it.
God.
Yeah.
I was watching it like, this should be illegal. Like, it should be illegal to film this and show it to me.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe you people have done this to me. This is like, we need to get like this needs to be rated whatever the highest age rating is you can put on a documentary program.
Yeah.
Because this is like, it's gut-wrenching. It is awful to watch. And like, I know that like ethically they're not supposed to do anything to like help. And I get it, but I'm watching it and I'm just like, like it is. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's just these baby flamingos that are out on like a really, really shallow salt, like you mentioned, like a very, very shallow salty water, and the water is so salty that the salt crusts on the baby flamingos and it makes them too heavy and they can't take off and fly. So like when the flock flies off and leaves to go somewhere else, the babies are like too heavy to take off with them. And it is just, I mean, I still think about it and it just like, I feel like I definitely cried and had to turn it off after
Yeah.
watching that. I was like, I can't watch any more of this. This is too much. And like, I still just like, anytime I think about it, it's that like when you think of like a really, really scary movie and you're like, oh no, I have to block this next part out. Like,
Yes.
it's gut wrenching. And I think it was in the same season as the walrus thing, the thing with the walruses that were falling off the cliff.
Oh,
I've
God.
seen that too, Ellen. Yeah.
So everyone was talking about the walrus thing. And I was like, that's not even the worst one. The flamingo thing is so much worse.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
it made me think of
and what-
salt-crusted cod. So that probably makes me the meanest person in the entire universe.
That is
I
too
mean,
funny.
from my perspective, the crazy thing about that is this is literally optimal habitat for those birds. And
Like
so,
Shannon said, this
like,
is stupid.
Yeah.
I know, exactly.
That is stupid.
Go live somewhere else.
Yeah.
Go somewhere where this doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And they're up at
Yes.
3,500, 4,000 meters too in some of these salt places in the Andes in South America. Not only could they get frozen in salt, who is it? Lot's
There's
wife or
pumas.
something like that from the Bible, salt frozen or whatever. But they're dealing with virtually no air, no oxygen at that kind of elevation too.
Like, you guys need that to fly.
Yeah.
Stop. Go somewhere.
Yeah, nature is red in tooth and claw. Little kids learn that pretty quickly.
Gosh, it's brutal. And like, I know, circle of life, it has to happen and everything. That's just like the reality of nature and everything. But God,
Oh.
that was it's a punch straight to the gut.
Yeah.
Well, it's it's an extreme environment, and
Yeah.
and yet they can flourish there because of the adaptations that they have, in spite of these other things that happen. I mean, it's wild, and the things that the photographers had to do to get those images are
Yeah.
kind of absurd too. I mean, those
God.
folks will. It's not easy.
It's not, I feel like it's not easy just to get your human body there, but to like be there with also lugging a bunch of like documentary camera equipment and so like a truck worth of like microphones and cameras and stuff. I can't imagine. I mean, I'm glad someone did it, and I'm also glad it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Did you watch The
Yes.
Americas, that nature documentary series on the Americas that was narrated by Tom Hanks, I think, narrated
I think
it?
I did.
We
I
haven't
think
watched
so.
we haven't watched all of them yet, but we have them recorded. But they go into great detail about how they actually, and that was, to me, that was one of the most interesting aspects of that documentary series, is them talking about how they did this, what it took, how long someone sat in a blind in a tree that they built a platform on in the absolute downpouring rain to see a harpy eagle, for example, that was nesting and about to hatch some chicks. And these women, they sat in that blind for almost an infinite amount of time, getting completely soggy, probably bit by God only knows what. Yeah. And they talked about people, the filmmakers, what were they going across the water to film, John? Do you remember?
That was to film Chilean flamingos on the breeding grounds.
Is that what it
Yeah, they
were-
built these. They
Yeah.
built these sleds, and they're trying not to spook them, so they've got to camouflage all this. And
Yeah, they're flamingos, so the only way they can get close is to kind of dress like flamingos.
How
I don't mean
cool.
like a Halloween
there we go.
costume, but what they had to do is just unbelievable. And watching that, those people you have to be seriously dedicated. Although John, there's like these famous stories of an anaconda that John can talk about. I don't like snakes, but yeah,
I like snakes.
Yeah.
I want to hear about the
Sounds
anaconda.
like a cool
I
story.
don't like snakes.
Is it?
I don't know, big snakes. Nah.
Have you
Actually,
have you
little
seen
snakes
the
aren't.
movie Anaconda, John?
No,
You-
no, but I'm
Oh,
sure
it's
I
great.
get a kick out of it.
It's great. We
it's
should do
awesome.
a movie
Yeah.
night and talk about that.
Do the
No,
you got to do the
I don't like
series. You
snakes.
got to end up with Piranaconda because they got
Oh.
Piranaconda also.
Whoa.
You got to do Piranaconda.
That sounds
Never
That is
heard of
amazing.
exactly what it sounds like.
That's awesome. Oh, incredible.
Yeah, next time anyone feels insecure about like, oh, I went out to bird watch and I didn't see the cool rare bird I wanted to see, watch a documentary like behind the scenes making of and see what goes into seeing some of these. Like, don't feel insecure if you watch a documentary and you think I never get shots like that. Watch the making of and you see what it takes to get shots like that. And I think you'll be satisfied.
You feel better about
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
They're not parachuting in with their iPhone.
Right.
It's not on a GoPro.
Well, I think we're getting close on time. So is there anything else on the flamingo we want to chat about before we wrap it up?
Can I share one more thing from the paper that I didn't get a chance to talk
For
about
sure.
because
Yeah.
I had never heard of this before? Okay,
Mhm.
so part of the thing they talked about in that paper, which I dropped a link to you guys, but I should also say the title of the paper. It's called "Flamingos Use Their L-Shaped Beak and Morphing Feet to Induce Vortical Traps for Prey Capture," and that was in May of 2025. And so one of the things they talk about that I'd never heard of before is how they skim along the surface of the water. Well, they
Yeah.
take that flat part of the beak and drag it in a zigzag along the surface, not just like dragging it straight, but they'll kind of do a zigzag. And when they drag it along the surface of the water, it creates something I'd never heard of called a Kármán vortex street.
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
never heard of this before, but it's apparently a specific type of like zigzagging waterfall or no, zigzagging whirlpools where it's like a zigzagging pattern with whirlpools on either side, like staggering. And so what happens is that creates a recirculation zone where things are being spun around the outside and kind of slingshotted up the middle, where everything gets recirculated back towards the flamingo's beak. So it creates, even if the water is flowing in the opposite direction, it creates a recirculation zone that spins the current around and makes everything flow right back into their mouth. Which is like, I'd never heard of this before. And it's got the coolest name, a Vortex Street. That's so cool. It's like it's just, because I was reading this paper about how they're like creating vortices and creating currents and reversing currents and stuff. I'm like, this is waterbending. This is Avatar: The Last Airbender, waterbending.
on a microscopic or micro individual scale. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so
cool. I thought it was so cool, and I wanted to get a quick little mention in there for the
Thank
Kármán
you.
Vortex Street.
Super
Yeah,
cool.
thanks.
Do you remember who the first author of that paper was? Off
Let
the top
me
of your
see.
head, I always like
have it
to say
open.
if someone writes something that
Yes.
cool, their name should be. We should say their name.
Victor M. Ortega Jimenez
Very
is the
cool.
first author. And it looks like there's quite a few authors on this bad boy.
Nice.
That's
And
common.
we can share it. We can share it in our show notes too,
For
so
sure.
everybody listening can listen.
Yes, it is such
Yeah.
a cool paper. It's one of those ones where, like, a lot of times, these papers can be really dry, and you can kind of like your eyes glaze over. But I was reading this one, and I was
Hey,
like, "That's
we
what I'm
resemble
talking
that."
about."
That's awesome.
It's a good one. So a great mention for that. That's my book rack.
I mean, it's interesting. They must have done a good job writing it. If you can describe it that way, that means that they really wrote it
Yes.
so that people could understand what it was they're trying to say. So good for them.
They also have really good graphics.
Oh,
like they
cool.
have like videos and really like well labeled like graphics that help a lot.
Very cool.
Well, there, flamingos are
gotta
even
check it
cooler
out.
than we knew.
Every time I learn something about them, it just makes them like a little bit cooler.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Ellen, this has been so great. Thank you so
Yes.
much for coming on. We really
so
appreciate
fun talking
it.
to you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It was really
Yeah.
fun.
So much
Yeah,
fun.
definitely come back on and we can talk about something else. We'd love to have you
Yes.
back.
Anytime, put me in, coach.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, RJ and Amanda, what are you going to dress your flamingo up as the next time you take it
Oh.
somewhere?
Good question.
Yeah, I don't know.
I have to think about that.
Yeah.
It
Something
it can't go somewhere
already
without
talked
some
about vampire.
costumes.
Yeah, I
Now that